Hello everyone, welcome back to the questions based on jurisprudence. The first question, why is democracy significant in the relationship between law and politics? Democracy ensures that laws reflect the people's will while safeguarding individual and minority rights. What is the primary function of law in a political system? To regulate power, maintain order, and protect citizens' rights. What is legislation? Legislation refers to laws made by a legislative body such as a parliament or Congress. What does feminist jurisprudence say about sexual harassment and violence against women? Feminist jurisprudence critiques the legal system's vast failures to address these crimes adequately and calls for reforms to protect women's autonomy and dignity. How does natural law apply to international law? It is invoked in moral arguments against practices like slavery, torture, and discrimination. What natural rights did John Locke believe in? Life, liberty, and property. How did Rousseau's concept of the social contract differ from Hobbes and Locke? Rousseau emphasized the general will, prioritizing collective well-being over individual interests. What is the primary purpose of the social contract in law? To ensure stability, justice, and a protection of rights. What are common challenges in the administration of justice? Delays, corruption, access barriers, and overburdened courts. Why is delay in justice a major issue? It prolongs suffering and denies timely legal resolution. How does corruption affect justice? Bribery and political influence undermine fairness and public trust. What are barriers to accessing justice? Economic, social, and cultural factors may limit legal access. Why are overburdened courts a problem? Overburdened courts slow down legal proceedings and reduce efficiency. What reforms help improve justice administration? Court reforms, legal aid expansion, and alternative dispute resolution (ADR). How do court reforms help? They streamline processes, digitize records, and increase judicial capacity. Why is legal awareness important? It helps people understand their rights and access justice. What is an example of social justice? Anti-discrimination laws and affirmative action programs. What is communicative justice? Communicative justice concerns fair exchanges in transactions between individuals or entities. What is an example of communicative justice? A fair business transaction based on mutual consent without a deception. What is restorative justice? A justice approach that focuses on healing relationships and repairing harm rather than punishment. What is alternative dispute resolution or ADR? ADR is a system using mediation, arbitration, and a conciliation to resolve disputes quickly. How does ADR benefit the justice system? It reduces court congestion and provides faster, more flexible solution. Why is the administration of justice crucial for society? It upholds fairness, protects rights, and ensures legal accountability. What are the two criticisms of contractarian theories? They may be fictional constructs and fail to address inequalities in society. How do contractarian theories influence modern legal systems? They underpin legal democracy, constitutional law, and human rights theories. What is the role of law in contractarian theories? Law enforces the social contract by ensuring compliance, maintaining order, and protecting rights. List the 6 basic elements of law: norms, authority, sanctions, rights and duties, justice, and legality. What role does authority play in the legal system? Authority refers to the legitimate power to create, interpret, and enforce laws, typically vested in legislatures, courts, and executive bodies. Why are sanctions important in law? Sanctions act as penalties for violating legal norms, ensuring compliance and deterring unlawful behavior. Why is natural law important in debates about justice? It provides a moral basis for critiquing unjust laws and calling for ethical principles in legislation. What is the natural law critique of legal positivism? It argues that unjust laws lack legitimacy, even if formally enacted by the state. Give an example of laws that natural law theorists would criticize as unjust: apartheid laws or discriminatory laws. How do legal obligations differ from moral obligations? Legal obligations are enforced by the state, while moral obligations are based on individual conscience. Is the obligation to obey the law universal? Yes. All citizens within a jurisdiction are subject to the same legal rules and duties. What is a legal duty? A legal duty is an individual's obligation to act in accordance with the law, with the legal consequences for failure to comply. How does social contract theory explain the obligatory nature of law? It suggests that individuals agree to abide by laws in exchange for protection and benefits from the state. Why are reproductive rights important in feminist jurisprudence? They ensure women's bodily autonomy, including access to contraception, abortion, and a protection against forced sterilization. Or what is an example of restorative justice? A victim and offender meeting to discuss harm caused and agree on steps for amends. What is environmental justice? Environmental justice ensures fair distribution of environmental benefits and burdens to prevent marginalization. What is an example of environmental justice? Policies preventing pollution from disproportionately affecting low-income communities. What is the main idea of legal positivism? Law is a system of rules created by a legitimate authority independent of morality. What are political structures? Organizations and institutions that organize power in a society, such as governments, courts, and political parties. What are power structures? Systems that describe how power is distributed and exercised within a society. What are the different forms of power in society? Coercive, that is force; economic, that is control of resources; and cultural, that is control of ideologies. What is the role of the state in power structures? The state enforces laws, policies, and regulations, either reinforcing or challenging power imbalances. What defines a just society? A society with fairness, equality, dignity, and rights for all individuals. What is the primary function of courts? The primary function of courts is to adjudicate disputes by interpreting and applying the law to resolve conflicts. What does Article 142 of the Indian Constitution empower the Supreme Court to do? It empowers the Supreme Court to do complete justice in any case pending before it by issuing necessary orders of directions. What is the significance of Article 142(1)? Article 142(1) allows the Supreme Court to pass decrees or orders to ensure complete justice in any pending case. How does Article 142(2) extend the court's power? It grants the Supreme Court authority to issue any directions or orders necessary for complete justice, even overriding procedural limitations.